All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 2021 Virtual Christmas Summit sponsored by Boscoyo Studio. All of the presentations in this room are specifically sponsored by arama. Our next presentation is Converting S4 Sequences to S5 by Matt Brown, one of the developers for the software. During the presentation, please do not unmute yourself or start your video. You're welcome to use the chat to ask relevant questions about the presentation, since other attendees or the host might be able to answer your question, but please save questions directed at the presenter for the end of the session during the Q&A. At that point, you'll be allowed to unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can put them in the chat. Thank you all for attending, and I will turn it over to Matt.
Okay, mic should be on?
Yep, we can hear you. You're good to go.
Okay, so welcome everybody. And in this session here, we're going to talk about converting S4 sequences to S5. There's an upgrade process, and so I'll show you several ways to navigate that process. Converting your sequences. Perhaps you haven't are thinking about S5 but haven't upgraded yet. You have sequences created in older versions. Maybe you've already upgraded to S5, but you have some older sequences that you want to get back in your show or modify in S5. This class will show you how to quickly get those older sequences into S5. If you're still using version 2 or version 3 of our software, this tutorial still applies to you if you're interested in moving to S5, which we think is a worthy upgrade for you. So we want to make the upgrade process easy so you can enjoy all of the new features that we've added to S5. A little bit about me. My first Christmas display was in 2007. Like you, I started out, like many of you, I started out with 16 channel light arama controller, and I'm still adding lights to my display. So I still do a display every year using the latest version of S5. So I don't know, when I worked for another company, we called that eating our own dog food, right? We use the software that we produce and sell. So besides lights, I love watching my kids grow up. I have a daughter who's 24 and my son just turned 23. They're the love of my life, along with my wife. And we're supposed to present a fun fact. This is my 50th year of programming computers. And that, I know that makes me sound old, but I started programming when I was little. And my first job was when I turned 16, got a job, was computer programming. So it's not to, I don't, I was going to compare myself to being an artist, right? So not that I'm an artist, I have no art skills, but an artist, when they're starting out, doesn't produce the same paintings that they do when they're older. And so likewise, I may be have been doing this a long time, but it's experience, and that I'm not producing the same kind of computer programs I was 50 years ago. So this to give you an idea that I've got a lot of experience in this. I've been doing lights, Christmas lights, Halloween lights for a long time. Last year I did my first 4th of July show. So on to upgrading. So sequences in the S5 version are stored in a different file format and have a different file extension than in prior versions. So in prior versions, we had musical sequences had an LMS file extension, and animation sequences had an LAS extension. In S5, we've just got one extension for both, and it's called LOR edit. One of the byproducts of this is that your sequences created with prior versions must be upgraded, but they can, because they have a different file extension, in your sequences folder, you can still have your old LMS and LAS files, and the new ones, the upgraded files will have an LOR edit extension. So those sequence files can exist side by side. And to start the upgrade process, you do this by selecting File Open from the main menu and then selecting the LMS or LAS file you want to upgrade. And I'm going to go through several scenarios later with the software, and we'll go through upgrading several sequences. Okay, so after opening a LMS or LAS file, you'll be presented with this screen. Now we changed, this is a relatively new screen, and this is why we're having this class this year. This is an upgrade over the previous upgrade screen we had before. In earlier S5 versions. So if you haven't upgraded to our latest release 5.6.0, I would encourage you to upgrade. This screen came in before 5.6.0, but always encourage you to be on the latest release. So on this screen, the several things to notice. The first thing is that there are 3 steps to the upgrade process. Step 1 is to choose a preview. Step 2, modify the preview if needed. And step 3 is to actually go through the upgrade, do the physical upgrade mechanics and create the S5 sequence. Okay, so, and those 3 steps are listed across the top of the file. How do you move from one step to another? Well, that's the button in red. All right, so that's another important thing. So you've got 3 steps. The red button moves you from one step to the next. There is no back button. If you need, if you think you made a mistake or change your mind, you can click the cancel button and then you'll start again. And that goes more than extends beyond just this screen. I want to emphasize that perhaps you go through the whole upgrade process and you're not satisfied for whatever reason with the upgraded sequence. There's nothing preventing you from making some adjustments and upgrading that sequence again. You can go through it as many times as needed. You're not hurting anything. It's not hopefully it's one pass through, but if you need to make adjustments and upgrade again, you can, there's nothing preventing you from doing that. On the upper right side, it tells you the sequence you're upgrading and what the new sequence name will be. And then over on the right, it has 2 lists of channels, and they're divided into 2 areas. One is not matched and one is matched. So the matched area will show you based on what you've got in the preview, which is in the lower left. These are the channels that match up with your preview. The channels in the in this case, LAS file that match up to the preview that you're going to use in S5. The not matched are the items in your legacy sequence that don't match up to the preview, and you will need some adjustment. And you need to add to the preview more than likely. So your goal at the end of going through this process should be that your not matched area should become empty. And now there may be some reasons to leave some things in there. Perhaps you had some old channels that you used in 2015 that aren't part of your display anymore, but you left them in your sequence and you don't need them anymore. Well, of course, you may leave those in the not matched area because you're not using them anymore. But for the most part, your not matched area should, after you're working through the upgrade process, should go to become an empty list. Okay, so and we do this by choosing a preview in step 1 and then adding any unmatched channels to the preview in step 2. Now, what happens if there are still items in the not matched list? Well, then those become what are called in S5 archived props. If there are any, and archive channels cannot control lights, but they preserve the effects that were in the original sequence. So if you had an old mini tree or something that's no longer in your display, that channel becomes archived, well, then that channel will still be in the sequence, but it won't be able to control lights. But you can, let's say you have something else in your display that you want to have the same effects that old mini tree had. Well, this archive channel is still in the sequence, and you can copy and paste from the archived channel into whatever your new prop is. So, and copy the effects. So that's their purpose, is they stay there. The archive channels preserve what you had in your sequence before, but they can't control anything. You will get a message at the end of the upgrade process listing any of the channels that were archived. And when you open the sequence, archive channels will be have an @ prefix in the sequence grid. And so you see this in the screenshot on the left side of the slide. This DMX 1.1 unit 01.3, those 4 channels have been archived and have that @ in front of them. Okay. All right, so for those who are new to S5 or haven't tried it out yet, what is a preview? So we're just to give you a brief idea of what we're talking about here. Sequences in S5 require a preview, and it's new. This is new to S5. And a preview specifies all of the channels that will be used in the sequence. So the channels you use are no longer part of this sequence file. You can think of them as not being in the sequence file, but being in the preview that's associated with the sequence. Okay, so if you change, you can create a preview during the upgrade process, or you can create a preview ahead of time before you do the upgrade. One preview can be associated with multiple sequences. This is a big advantage in S5. So if I have and this is kind of a very simple example, but if my 2018 Christmas display had 4 channels, something over the window, one for the door, one for the eaves, and one for the gutter. You can see the physical channel assignments are part of the preview. And then that preview is associated with all of your sequences that are part of your show. So, so now if I went and my gutter needed to, the lights on my gutter needed to be changed from circuit 4 to circuit 5, I wouldn't go to the sequence to change that. I would change that in the preview. And then all of that, since that preview is associated with all 3 sequences, that channel change automatically gets applied to all of the sequences associated with that preview. Okay, so that's a brief in the 2-minute overview of previews. There's a lot more information on previews in our the help file, our online help for S5, as well as a number of YouTube videos that are out there that show how to build a preview if you want more information about that. So step 1 in upgrading our sequence is to choose a preview for the sequence. And you can choose an existing preview, or you can create a preview from scratch. Okay. You can select several different previews from the existing preview list. As you select each one, the matched and not matched lists that we saw on the right-hand side of the screen will be automatically updated to show you how well the preview matches up to the sequence you were upgrading. If you choose to create a new preview, you don't have to start from scratch. You can easily import visualizer file, the old block style animations from the sequence editor, or if you have a pixel editor preview, you can use that as well. Okay, and in fact, you can combine any of neither 1, 2, or 3 of those at the same time when upgrading your sequence to create the preview that will be associated with it. So if you create a new preview during the upgrade process, you'll only need to do that for the first sequence you upgrade, because remember, the previews are shared across, can be shared across sequences. So as you upgrade subsequent sequences that use the same set of channels, you can use the same preview to upgrade those subsequent sequences that you upgrade. Now, if those other sequences use a different set of channels, then you may have to make some adjustments or perhaps use a different preview. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, so step 2 is to modify the preview if needed. And the goal is, as we're modifying the preview, to reduce the not matched list to an empty list. Okay. And you can, while modifying the preview, you can import visualizer, sequence editor, animation, or pixel editor. There are buttons for each of those. Those buttons will be, the visualizer is an independent file, so that button will always be enabled, but animation and pixel editor will be enabled only if those things exist for that particular sequence. Okay, selecting an unmatched channel and drawing it as a light string or flood on the, you can select a channel in the unmatched list, and I'll demonstrate this in a few minutes, and then draw it on the design canvas, and it'll automatically, it'll create a prop in your preview, and that prop will have the channel assigned that was in the not matched list, and have the name and color and so forth from the sequence that you're upgrading. You can also select one or more unmatched channels and designate them as beat channels. So, for example, if you used the beat wizard in S4 and created a channel to track the beats, you would, in S5, we've got a separate type of channel just for beats. And so you could use that, designate those channels as beat channels. I will show you that also. And finally, and this is important, you can auto-generate the props. So this means that, and I'll demonstrate this as well, but auto-generate the props is very fast. And so if you're in a hurry and you don't care what your preview looks like, you're just going to be sequencing according to what you see in the sequence grid. Auto generation is a tool for you because you can quickly generate a preview that matches your sequence, and you will be available to use right away. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to start a demo, and in the first demo here, I'm going to create a preview from scratch, and I'll be using some of the tools in the design area. So we've got undo, redo buttons on the left side of the toolbar, and then you can zoom in and out. You can change the brightness of the background image if you have a picture of your house. You can set the background image. The format menu allows you to align multiple props so that you can put them all in a straight row. You can, the add button allows you to add a light arama controller. So if this is particularly useful if your sequence maybe has an old CCR in it or something, you can add the CCR to your display into your preview using that plus button. If you add something and you need to go back and delete it, there's a delete button for that. The scroll bars are there when you've zoomed in. The scroll bars allow you to move around the image. Okay, so let me pull up S5 here. And so the first sequence I'm going to upgrade is the LOR chase example. As you can see from the date on this file, it's at least from 2010, so it's been around a long time. It's an 8-channel sequence, but I'll be able to demonstrate some of the tools that you would use when upgrading a sequence. And being 8 channels, it won't take us the rest of the time to upgrade this one sequence. Okay, so I did the file open and selected my my sequence file. Here are the 8 channels. And step 1 is highlighted up here. Choose a preview for the S5 sequence. If I have any questions, I can click the question mark button. That'll pull up the help that we include with our software, and that'll take you through give you a detailed explanation of everything on this screen. So in this example, I'm going to start with a new preview, and by default, it chooses the name of the sequence as the name for your new preview. You can of course go in here and give it a new name, demo number 1. Okay, and so now I've got these 8 channels, and well, let's go back. So now I've said I'm going to create a new preview. We need to move to step 2 so I can modify this preview. Okay, so the preview section grays out. That I've made my selection. I'm creating a new preview, and now I can modify this preview as needed. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a background image of my house. It's not actually my house, but we'll pretend. There we go. So there's the house. I can change I'm going to dim it down a little bit so that we can see the lights that get drawn on there. All right. And now that I have the image of my house, I can start placing these light strings. So unit 1, I'm going to say these now over here. We've got a selection tool, so I can select more than one if I need to. Right now, I'm just going to go channel by channel, which you can do just by clicking on it. Ooh, I click the header, which resorts the channels. And then there are these 4 buttons over here. So the music button designates whatever channels I've selected as beat channels. This next one is the string drawing tool. So this will designate this as a light string. And the next one is a floodlight tool. And the next one is the auto generation, which would automatically create something, and we'll demonstrate that later. So for now, I'm just going to draw strings. So I'm going to select the string tool. It tells you here, click on the design canvas to start drawing your string. Then a single click in the left mouse button will insert a vertex into the line and allow you to continue drawing. So so I'm going to draw the roof line first. If I had an eave in the roof line, so I could have multiple line segments and have it do that. And actually we'll see that with when I outline the windows. I don't need to see this pop up every time, so I'm going to say don't show this message again. And now I have a pencil that indicates that I'm drawing. And now I'm drawing the roof line. And to end, I'm just going to double click. And now I have lights on my roof line. Okay. And you'll notice channel 1 now is matched to preview because it's now in the preview. If I click the second item, and I'm going to draw a string for that, and I'm going to outline one of these windows, and I just single click when I get to a corner of the window, and it starts the next line segment. All right, and there I'm done with that. And notice now I can drag this window around with my mouse. If I want to move the corners, I can move the corners around. All right, so, and the color is the color that was in the original sequence. So you'll see this next window will come out in a different color. I'm going to outline the next window. And this is what I'm doing here now is designating, this is where my unit 1.3, this is the lights that I'm controlling. So unit 1.4 is going to control the next window. All right. So that one was a blue channel. And let's do the downstairs windows. All right, and one more window. All right, and if I didn't like where those the corners ended up, I can just drag those corners. And if I really wanted to get specific, I could zoom in on right here, right? And I can move those, make those line up better. All right, so now I've done that. Now I'm going to say these next two are floodlights. So I'm going to, instead of clicking on the string tool, I'm going to click on the floodlight tool. And this just says click on the canvas where you want the floodlight to be placed. Okay, thank you. Don't show me that again. And so I'm going to say the first floodlight is here. If I don't click on exactly the right place, I can always click on it and drag it around to the exact where I want it placed. And I'm going to say the last one is another floodlight, and we'll place that in front of the other on the other side. And now look, my not matched is empty. I've got all 8 channels matched, and so I'm ready for this sequence to be upgraded. So now I'm ready to move on to the next step. Well, let me demonstrate just one. So if I wanted these, let's demonstrate the format menu at least once. So now I want to align these windows, the top of these windows, so they all match. So that would be what's part of what the format menu is, right? So there, I'm done. Let's click next step. This had a track 1 in the old sequence. I want to preserve that. I've added, says now I have a new preview in S5 called VCS 21 Demo 1. Right, and now here's my sequence in S5. And it looks exactly as it did in S4 or S3 or S2 whenever it got created. All right, so now, and if I want to see the playback of what I've done, so here's my preview window, and now that's too bright. Let's dim that way down so we can see what's going on. And I click play. All right, so my sequence works. I've upgraded an S4 sequence to S5. All right, so this has got loop. There's no music, so you're not missing anything. Okay, so that sequence got upgraded. Okay, and I'm not going. Now at this point, you would normally click save. I'm not going to save it. All right, so back to our presentation. Oop. Demo 2. I'm going to demonstrate importing sequence editor animation. And in fact, I'm going to use the same sequence I was just using because it has an animation associated with it. So now I'm going to say open. One other thing I was going to point out is on the lower right here, we have a filter. Since I'm just demonstrating upgrading legacy sequences, I could pick this legacy sequence here and it would only show me LMS and LAS files. Okay, so I'm going to choose the same sequence, but we're going to upgrade it using a slightly different method this time. Okay, so use an existing preview. No, I'm going to start a new preview and we're going to call this VCS 21 demo number 2. Okay, so that's step number 1. So now I'm free to modify the preview. Notice the animation button here is enabled, and it's only enabled when the sequence you're upgrading has an animation associated with it. So I am going to click the animation button, and it's just one click, and the animation is imported. Notice there's no more not matched. There was each channel in the sequence was in the animation. So that all works, and I'm done. No drawing required. Okay, so click next step, click OK. I've now added my new preview demo number 2, and there's my sequence. And one thing I'm going to show you, you can always edit the preview. The preview associated with the sequence in S5 is always listed in the upper left here. This is actually a button you can click. And so I'm going to click on the name of the preview. That's popped up on my other screen. I have to move it back over. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 8 of the props here, and I'm going to increase the bulb size a little bit just to make those bulbs easier to see. Okay, so done that. So now they're a little more visible. The bulb size is bigger. And now if I bring my playback window up, and I play the sequence, now you see the demo as it was originally designed using the animation that came with it. Okay, so sequence editor animations come across just fine. And whereas in the sequence editor animation, I remember using it years ago, the number 1 feature I wished it had was the ability to move items around. So if I had a mega tree or something, I wanted to move it around my animation, but you could never do that. But you can do that now that it's in S5, in S5. So if I want to move it now so that it looks like this, that would have taken you at least 15 minutes in S4, S3, and using the animation tool in prior versions. And you can do that in a matter of seconds. Okay, so, all right, so that again, I'm going to close this, and normally you would save, but I'm going to say no. All right, so back to our presentation. So importing an S4 visualizer file, and this is the visualizer file we're going to use. Let's see. So let's go back to S5. And so now I'm going to open, I have all my visualizer demo here. We're going to use, this is a sequence from someone sent me when I was helping them on the help desk. So, and so we'll open it. And we obviously don't want to use our demo number 2 nor demo number 1. That doesn't match anything about this sequence. You'll notice we have a whole lot of channels here. So we're going to start with a new preview. And I'll just leave the preview name as the as the same as the sequence file. Next step. Okay, and so now we're going to import the visualizer file for this sequence. Click open. Okay, so it's successfully imported. Fortunately, I don't have the background image associated with this, and so we'll just have to live without a background image. Okay, but the visualizer all came in as it, if I go back to the slide. This is what it actually looked like this was a snapshot of this actual visualizer file in the S4 visualizer. So you can see it looks exactly the same, right? But we still have some channels up here. So one of the problems in S4 was that the visualizer wouldn't tell you if your visualizer file matched up with your sequence. So they were two independent things. Now this is telling you, okay, for this sequence that we chose, not everything matches up. We've got some issues here. A lot matched up, but some did not. So we've got 4 candy canes here that are missing. We've got a bunch of candy canes that came across, but 4 were not in the preview, right? So rather than trying to draw them out, I'm going to demonstrate the auto-generate capability. So I've selected those. I click on the first one, shift-click on the 4th one. So all 4 of those get selected. And I click auto. Now those 4 channels, the missing candy canes, are now represented by these stars at the bottom. All right, if I click on an item here, the name of the selected item appears on this row. So this is candy cane 29, 30, 7, and 8. Okay. Now we've got some more things that didn't come across. So these next items are macro channels. The first 4 are for macro channels for our CCF floods, and they use to specify on and off times. All these other channels are macro channels for cosmic color pixels or cosmic color ribbons. You might recognize those extensions. So I already know that in this particular sequence, none of these macro channels are used. All right, so I'm going to skip all of those macro channels. But down here, whoops, at the bottom, we've got some more channels. So this control house and everything below control house are other things that are in the sequence but weren't in the visualizer file. So I want to be quick about this. And so I'm going to say auto generate. And so now all of those other channels got created as stars up above here and are now represented in my sequence. They will still play and control lights, but they just happen to be represented as stars instead of an actual string of lights somewhere on the house. Okay, and everything else here is just a macro channel. And so I am going to leave these here. And when I go to the next step, and if we remember from the presentation, what happens when there's items in not matched, says there are still unmatched items. These items will be archived and not control lights. I think I'm going to continue and say yes, because there's actually no effects on any of those items, okay? And again, here's a second message saying all these things were archived and that it's also added the new preview to our list of previews. Click OK. And now we have the sequence. All right. And if I flip over to show all items, you'll see all these. And here's all of our macro channels. And you can see if I scroll all the way across, there's nothing on them. And even a better way is there's a tool up here on the sequence menu called Manage Archived Props. So if I select that, now I get a list of all of the archived props in my sequence. And it has a column here that tells me the number of effects that are on each of those things. And I can see that there are no effects on any of these channels. So what I usually do when I upgrade a sequence is there's a button up here that says select props with no effects. Okay, so it said it selected 215 props with no effects. And because they have no effects, I know they don't do anything in my sequence, so it's okay to delete them. Okay, so now the total number deleted went to 215 here. If I made a mistake, I could still click the cancel button and they would remain in the sequence. But I think I've done everything okay, so I click save. And now all those archived items are gone. They've been deleted from the sequence, and I'm just left with a clean sequence with all of those things that were in the visualizer. So now if I open my playback window and run this sequence, I don't know if you can hear the music. But anyway, that's playing with the music and things are working. But let's take a look at a couple of things. Some of those things that I created as I auto-generated. Here's the preview again. I just clicked the name of the preview. In fact, I just click the maximize button here. And so let's take a look at what you might do now to fix some of these. So this was Candy Cane 29. Where's Candy Cane 28? Well, it's way off to the right over here in the preview. So I want to make Candy Cane 29. I want it to be a candy cane, and I want it to be next to candy cane 28. So what we can do here is I can double click, or I can click on it and then say edit, either way. And rather than being a bulb, now all these are candy canes that face the left. If you look at the other candy canes, and we'll say it has these candy canes look pretty simple. So let's put 20 lights on them, and there are no folds are really for RGB candy canes. So there are no folds, 20 lights, candy cane shape facing left. Click save. Still has the bulb shape of a star, but down here in the upper left, I can change that and change those to squares. And they don't need to be nearly that big. I can resize. And now I can move it over next to the other candy canes. Here's candy cane 30. That's really candy cane left. 20 and 0. Save. Square. Size 2. Right, so I can go through all these and it's very easy to fix up the things that were missing from the visualizer file. Okay, so that was just a demonstration of a couple of them. So you can change these stars to something that's real after go into preview design and fix those up after you've upgraded your sequence. Okay, so that was using a visualizer file. Normally I think I'm going to go ahead and click save on this one. And let's save it. And now let's close. And How are we doing on time? We've got 10 minutes. Let me do the next one real fast, and then we'll have a couple of minutes for question and answer. So the last one is importing using the S4 pixel editor. So if I go up here and my next sequence is boughs of holly, and this has a pixel editor file associated with it. So I click open, and I want to start a new preview. It's going to be called Boughs of Holly. Click next, and then notice that the pixel editor button is enabled because it saw the pixel editor file. Right, so now all these things get imported. Now there's a few things that weren't in the pixel editor file. I can auto-generate those. These are floods. Oh, let's undo that. Here's a demonstration of undo. I meant to click the flood button. All right. Now, these last things after the floods, there I've got my 8 floods in. Now, these are things, effects, foreground, vocal. These all look like beat channels to me. And so here's where I would use the beat channel button. And then those get marked as beat channels. If I scroll down to the bottom, here you can see them, background one, beat channel, so forth. Okay, so now we've gone through that. So I click next step. It's got 2 tracks, and pixel editor sequencing will go into its own grid view called pixel editor. I've added a new preview called Boughs of Holly. So, and nothing got archived. Here are my beat channels up top, and my sequencing down below. If I flip over to the pixel editor channel, there's the pixel editor effects that got converted over. Do preview. And I think I have this just right here. And click yes. Now if I click play. Right. There we go. So that plays. So I guess we will, we've got a couple of minutes. We can answer some questions. Feel free to, I see a whole lot of things in chat, but I'm not sure. See, I have 130 sequences in S4 that are in use. Yeah, so yeah, you'd go through this. Well, one thing is you can still schedule those LMS files in S5. You don't necessarily have to convert. The only ones you'd have to convert are the ones that you want to change. So there's no reason, if everything's still on the same channels as when you created those LMS files, you can leave them as LMS files and still schedule them in your show. Yeah, Holiday Light Designer is not supported in S5. Servo Dog is just currently just treated as another channel. Although we'd certainly like to add something in the preview at some point that makes it look like a servo. So offer some better integration for the Servo Dog. Oh, there were channels that were highlighted in yellow. That's because there were some props that matched up twice. They used, they they had same channel listed twice. And so the second one was listed in yellow. Save button on the preview window and not have it close. Yeah, we've had that request before. That's it sounds really easy, but behind the scenes, it's actually really complicated. And so that's why we haven't done that yet. So I've certainly heard the requests and I understand the need, but it's just harder than it sounds. And so some of those requests where you can get by with the way it is, even though it might not be as convenient as what you're proposing, get lower down the priority list, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, no way to the LCC file is created theoretically from a sequence. So if you still have that sequence, you could use the create go through the upgrade process and dynamically create the sorry, yeah, did I say the wrong thing? The LMS file. So the LCC file got created was exported from an LMS file. So as long as you have that LMS file somewhere, you go through the upgrade process with the LMS file. But yeah, you can't choose an LCC file for going through the upgrade. Okay. Any other questions? We're just about out of time. We need to switch over to the next class. All right.
All right, I will take over then. Thank you so much for everyone for joining this presentation, and thank you again to Boscoyo and Lightorama for their sponsorship. At this point, we're actually going to take a 30-minute break so that you can go grab some lunch without missing any presentations. You're welcome to stay in the room or come back in 30 minutes. If you stay, you're welcome to chat with others, but I am going to disable the ability to screen share. We have a lot of great sequencing presentations coming up this afternoon, so be sure to join us again starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern.